Welcome to the Trimetric Roadmap, powered by Business Freedom Advisors, the podcast for business owners who want to grow their business and enjoy their life. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Landis, creator of the Trimetric Tracking System and author of Balancing Act. If you're tired of chasing success at the expense of your health, your marriage, or your peace of mind, you're in the right place. On this show, we help you track what really matters: business health, life quality, and leadership performance, all in one simple, powerful system. Because when those get out of sync, everything else starts to break down. Our goal here is to help you align it all so you can lead with clarity, scale with purpose, and finally enjoy the freedom you've been working so hard to create. And if it feels like no one's ever shown you how to pull that off, this podcast might just be the missing link you've been quietly searching for. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the Trimetric Roadmap podcast, brought to you by Business Freedom Advisors. I'm Scott Landis, and that's Jeff Jacob right there. Last episode,
with me as always.
Yeah, here we go again. Last episode, we introduced the 5 freedom levers. Jeff, we said keep it, know it, run it, grow it, fund it. That's the 5 freedom levers. So these are the 5 areas founders can improve to create a healthier, more valuable business. And here's the key: that depends less on the founder. So today we're going to keep going with the levers. We're going to focus on the first lever called keep it, or the profit and tax strategy lever. So because generating revenue is not the same as building wealth, I'm going to ask Jeff some questions about that. That's going to be interesting. A founder can grow the business, increase sales, hire more people, and work harder than ever, and still reach the end of the year wondering, where did all the money go? I mean, maybe I could relate. Yeah, I could totally relate. That's happened for sure. So anyways, it's easy to become so focused on revenue that you overlook what the business is actually producing for you. So many of us do that, right, founders? More revenue can create more complexity, more expenses, more taxes, and more risk without creating more freedom. And that's not okay. That's why we're here. We don't want that. The keep it lever is about protecting what the business earns, improving profitability, reducing unnecessary financial leakage, and turning business success into real personal and enterprise wealth. Because the goal is not just about a bigger business. The goal is about building a business that rewards you for the risk, energy, and years you've invested into it. So, Jeff, this is all teed up for you to speak into it. I'm going to be listening just as carefully as our podcast listeners. Let me start with this, a basic question. Why do so many founders build companies with impressive revenue, but still feel like they're not keeping enough of the money? I mean, it's really everywhere. So many good revenue companies feel like they're not keeping it. What's going on there? What are your thoughts?
Of course, there's a spectrum of things that can be, and it really takes. That's part of what I love about our diagnostic tools, with the business health diagnostic, with the decision matrix we talked about last time, but then some of the other elements of the trimetric system as well that come into play, because you really have to get to know the person. Usually what we see is that if we're talking about a company that has good revenue, but not enough of it's turning into profit. For instance, we were looking at an HVAC company the other day, a new client that's coming on. His profit margin of how much of his revenue actually turns into profit was around 5%, 5 to 7%. But then what it should
just for
be at,
context, yeah. What's a good level?
a good level for his industry, just a healthy level, nothing crazy, is in the 12 to 16, 17 kind of range. And
Okay,
so
and he was at 5.
he was around 5 to 7. And so if
Mm.
he's basically tripling that, would put him into a completely different place, both if he's trying to exit, which this guy's trying to exit. And so if he's trying to exit, tripling that percentage puts you in a whole different category of business, and it makes a huge difference. But why is he at that 5 to 7%? Probably because, and for I say probably because we haven't done the diagnostics for him, but for most people, what we're looking at is that this person has built this business from, you know, from trust in their gut, through their own will power, basically, of building this business, and a lot of sweat equity involved. And but now those same giftings, the same characteristics in that person that brought them to this place of healthy revenue are not the same characteristics. They're not the same strengths that really take a business to that next stage. A lot of companies have gone through such significant growth over the years, or as it's grown, I should say, over the years, they haven't known about what systems to implement. They've been trying to keep up with the work, keep up with the growth, keep up with the staff, all these different things. And so I was a part of an organization. I was in a support role early on in my life, where the company was doubling every year for 3 years straight.
Doubling
And
what, revenue?
yeah, doubling revenue, doubling the amount of work, everything was doubled
Mm,
every year for 3 years straight. And all of the metrics they were measuring for them. And and then, but so the person leading that company was just hiring people that were around. Just like, hey, I know this person, they can handle that. I know this person, they can handle that. And other people that were being kind of raised up through the ranks, let's put them over here, let's give them more of a role. And then let's just pay them a lot to get it done. Because that leader didn't want to be involved in any of it. They just wanted to hire people that could do their job and trust them to do their job. If they didn't do their job, fire them, get somebody else in there, that kind of thing. And so obviously that's a system that's not sustainable. And there's a lot of waste involved in that. You can streamline a lot of expenses, a lot of profits, a lot of health in an organization by being strategic about how you handle the different systems you put in place and how you handle hiring, what kind of expenses you're saying yes to, having somebody who can actually look at even the simple things of where do we get a copy machine, or
mm,
uh, how are we handling facility care? How are we handling, whatever? And our HR systems. Are we vetting vendors? Are we, or are we just trusting relationships? It's all over the board of what it can be, but most of the time it's happened because the founders have had to just willpower this organization and haven't necessarily looked at the systems in place. And so therefore it's kind of become this monster um, uh, that isn't necessarily streamlined
hmm
for
Yeah, so some of
optimized.
the yeah. So some of the red flags that we see, we pay too much in taxes, or why does it seem like we pay so much in taxes? There's usually some low-hanging fruit there. Could be, it seems like there's no profit or excuse me, or a low profit margin despite all this revenue, despite all this hard work. Why am I working so hard and the profit is not there? Why is that happening? So the goal is to maximize retained profit through things like structure and excuse me, through structure and strategy.
Right. Rather than being reactive. So that first category I was talking about, that's reactive leadership and reactive organizational growth. That's instead of being strategic and proactive. You want to be strategic, you want to be proactive, you want to be out ahead of it. If you're reactionary, it's going to be more expensive. Everything is, and it's not going to be as healthy. Um, so then, but then with the tax element, we have multiple stories of this, but I'm working currently with somebody who their organization was set up right, whether it's an S corp, C corp, or an LLC, whatever it is.
Like in
Uh,
entity optimization.
Entity optimization is a big deal. It's a really big deal. And so this person, were redoing their taxes for the last 3 years, 4 years. And through doing some edits to the taxes, he's actually owed somewhere around a $200,000 check from the IRS. And it's,
Just to put that into perspective, like what's like the average tax bill of this company,
oh,
roughly?
uh, probably it's varied over the years. Last year it was a lot lower. Probably $100,000 would be my guess. They're paying in taxes a year, and now they're getting a $200,000 check over the last 4 years. So about
Right.
50% tax reduction for them
Yeah.
because of optimizing some of the tax law that
Yeah.
a CPA typically doesn't catch. And this
Hmm.
this guy has been having a CPA who's a really good CPA, really good at the compliance, really good at the reporting, really good at knowing what box to put everything in, but not a tax strategist. That's why the
Hmm.
people we work with are CPAs and tax strategists in one house. So they work together to optimize it all. But um, but so what they do is they look at, okay, what's the right strategy for this? What's the entity optimization? What are, the different deductions we can get, the different credits we can get? And then how do we also, there's, dual entity structures and all kinds of things you can do depending on what's right for the company. There's not one, cookie cutter way to do it. uh, there's not a ton of different ways to do it, but it's you have to look at the organization and see what's right for your entity to optimize that, and then make sure you're positioning everything correctly so that at the end of the year your tax bill is lower. Where most CPAs look at, and most people just look at their tax bill at the end of the year and react to it. And
Hmm.
most of this that we're talking about is being proactive rather than reactive. And so if
Hmm.
we're proactive about how you're handling it through the year, we could see incredible deductions. Another guy
Hmm.
we were looking at owed $140,000 of taxes, and this was a very unique case, but because he didn't even realize uh, he could be in a certain tax category as a real estate professional, because he didn't even realize that. He didn't think that his organization worked for that, but it actually does, because that's a misleading phrase that they use there. And so just because of looking at his company in a different category, not just because of that, there were some other elements too, but that was the main one. We were able to eliminate all of his tax burden, $140,000 that he was going to pay coming back into the company, or into his pocket, whatever he wanted with that.
Hmm.
And it's transformative for these
Hmm.
people. If you're looking at a $2.1 million top line revenue company and you're getting $140,000 back into it, that's a huge big deal. That's a
Hmm.
$300,000. Oh no, it's not. It's $140,000 swing.
Yeah, I mean, and just to just to be play the part of the skeptic, because I can, I can, I've been there. It's hard to like. Okay, a couple of things where I think somebody might be like, being like, wait a second. Uh, First one is that let's say that $140,000 example, or I think it was a couple $100,000 example. The idea that that's just basically cash. I mean, they send you a check, but it's not like you might be thinking, oh, cool, I get a credit that because I've had this happen. I've had a capital gain credit that I could use over years, and even it only, but I could only use it on capital gain. So it's like this credit that I've got, credited to me, but I can't use it because I'm not getting capital gains right now. It's like, what's the point? We're not talking about that. This is in these two cases examples, it's $140,000 in the pocket of the founder, or 200,000 on the other one. It's just money. It's just literal cash profit. So that, just so in case you're thinking, like I might have been thinking. The other thing is that people that I can relate to. wondrous. They're like, my CPA is awesome. I've gone through so many CPAs. I love my CPA. He's awesome. I mean, he happens to be my next door neighbor, and I love him. He's a great neighbor. It's always the neighbor for some reason. But yeah, if you think your CPA is awesome, your CPA is probably awesome. But like Jeff was saying, compliance, preparing your tax returns, and tax strategy is two different things. And even knowing that, I was still like, but why? That doesn't make sense. But then somebody explained this piece to me, and there's so many reasons why this makes sense if you really get into it. But one thing that was really a kind of a eye opener for me is, think about this: there are tax attorneys out there. There are CPAs, that are looking at compliance from an IRS perspective. There are tax attorneys. Those are two completely different lenses or perspectives that you're going to look at your tax situation, your P&L and your balance sheet. Those two professionals are going to look at it completely different. And tax strategy looks at it from all of those perspectives. In fact, the tax strategy that we work with, the team of professionals that we work with, includes all of those perspectives, and they work together as a team. So you're not just having one individual saying, "Oh no, I can't do that because the IRS says I can't," or the idea that they have to stay in their lane. This is another piece of it. Each one of those professionals has to stay in their lane, and they're not supposed to go outside their lane. But if you have somebody who's coordinating the whole picture and using these professionals as a team that is kind of independent of these lanes, tax strategists are more like that. Is that, am I off on any of that, Jeff?
No, that makes sense to me. And that's why the people we work with have all of that in-house.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's some people have a tax strategist, a CPA, and a tax lawyer. Some of them have the lawyer. That's a lot fewer have that. But those different people are fighting against each other in most cases. Say, hey,
they're arguing.
Yeah, like when people start looking into reducing their taxes, as business owners, one of the first things you learn about is the Augusta rule, right? And so, one person will say, "Hey, you got to do this for the Augusta rule," and then another person's going to say, "Oh, but you need to do it this way," and then it's not cohesive. It doesn't work together. And so the people we work with, they do it as a team. And so everything is optimized for, okay, yes, this, but we have to do this because of this. Is that, oh yeah, well then let's do it this way, and then, oh, that works. They're working together as opposed to against each other. But also they're meeting with the business owners every quarter to actually, I meet with them as the CFO, but we go through every company that we're working with to be proactive about, okay, what's changing throughout the year so that we can be ahead of it for optimizing the tax burden.
Yeah, that's good. And that reminds me of one of the major problems that we solve, that being in this business of working with business owners for over 15 years, I saw the problem long before I had a solution for it. But Business Freedom Advisors was born out of a couple ideas. One was disjointed, disconnected advisors. And that what you just said reminds me of that. It's so critical, fellow founders and CEOs, to have a team of advisors that is all working on the same operating system. That's one thing that we pride ourselves on. We make sure we vet professionals and advisors and consultants. We vet all these people to a high degree because we need to make sure that they are willing to work on the same operating system. Because I know for a fact, I've experienced it myself, and I've seen it happen way too many times to other founders. Like, you get one professional to come in and change all these things up. Say a marketing guy comes in and changes all these things up, and then your sales system gets all messed up, and then you go and get a sales manager, and they change things, and then the operations is messed up, and then your financial side is like, wait, what's going on with all of these? How did we get all of this messed up? And what you need is what we call a fractional executive unit, but really you need a leadership team that all works cohesively. So we work with companies that have a leadership team in place that aren't necessarily synchronized as well as they could be. We can help with that. But we also work with founders who are kind of in between. It's just me and I'm developing my leadership team to fill in the gaps. Either way, you got to have systems. And this is what we've been talking about for the last couple months, Jeff, the executive performance piece that we measure in our trimetric process. Executive performance is all about that. All your leadership needs to be the same thing. And that's kind of what this, our tax team does too.
Right. Yeah. Let's say, it's going to take you an hour to figure out that conversation between the CPA and the tax strategist. That's what our fractional executive unit does. Instead of every quarter, the business owners having to go in and sift through those meetings and figure out what's the right way to move forward. We have a team that works together, and they work together with me or someone else from the team to be able to decide what's the right step to move forward for this company.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore we can just give a report. The business owner can trust us, and then we can report back to them what's going on. And if there's decisions that need to be made, then we give the advice and say, hey, here's what we recommend. What do you think? And then they can just react, or they can just react. We're using react is a bad word, but they can just make the very highest level decisions and have to get out and not have to be in all of the minute details, and it saves time. Everything keeps moving forward. They're not the bottleneck anymore. But it's all being worked together as a team around a metaphorical boardroom table, as opposed to moving around the office to all the little cubicles, metaphorically, and then making a decision. And so it's a lot more streamlined. You get better results, and you don't have to be involved in all of it. It's a wonderful system, and it's part of what my heart with that too, is part of what I loved about what you've built here, and why I wanted to be a part of it with you.
Yeah, I mean, you said something that they trust us, and the reason that they can trust us is the same reason that you could trust your own systems if you had some of the stuff that the reason they trust us because we've built some, we've installed some of the systems and processes that make it so everyone knows, like, the numbers are the numbers. And that's kind of foreshadowing what we're going to be talking about in the next couple episodes, where we're talking about financial intelligence and command. If your financial intelligence and command lever is solid, then you will trust your systems, and you'll therefore be able to trust the people running the system. Same with the operational infrastructure and intelligence systems. So we're going to be talking about those in the next couple of weeks. But before we wrap up this episode, Jeff, I want to come back to the example you gave about the HVAC company owner who's got a 5+ profit margin. And the question that I think comes up a lot is, like, I don't know what he's taking home. He's paying his personal bills based on his business, what he pays himself through the business, and there's a profit margin in there too. So I think business owners of small businesses confuse these two things, and I want you to speak to it. Like, okay, I'm taking home, say, $100,000 a year, and I also have a 5% profit margin. Is that true, or are these numbers getting mixed up? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, and it depends on what's really going on with the organization too. So
yeah, and maybe unpack it through the lens of business value, because that's really the only time it really matters, right?
Right. Well, on your taxes, it matters what the profit is.
Yes.
So therefore, and how you handle distributions is different than how you handle salary and all that kind of stuff. So, and so there are some nuance. There is a lot of nuance to it. But if this is one of the biggest things people get mixed up when they're looking at business valuations, and how much can I sell the company for? And that's what this guy was dealing with. I came in and gave him a valuation of his business for if somebody were to purchase it, it would be $450,000. He had gotten a bid for $650,000, and he was saying, "Okay, well, what's the difference here?" And he ended up going and getting another bid that was down more towards what I was saying from another professional. But the big difference for this guy and for a lot of people going through this is if people are coming in to buy your business, and if you're in that a higher value kind of range in the hundreds of thousands into the millions, if you're in that range, people aren't going to want to come in and spend that kind of money to buy a job. They're going to want to come in to buy an asset. And so therefore, when you're factoring the value, there's different ways to value a company. We're talking about using the EBITDA model there with the EBITDA multipliers and then even recasting EBITDA. But we're not getting into all that today. But what you're talking about is when the other people who were valuing this company were taking completely out anything the owner was getting paid. Unfortunately, you can't do that to sell an asset. You can do that to sell a job, but people aren't going to want to spend that kind of money to buy a job. And so the people that are wanting to buy a job, they're going to look at how much money can I be getting paid from this by working in it. People that are buying an asset are saying, how much revenue is or how much profit is this going to give me with me being able to be as hands-off as possible. And so what you have to do is you take out everything that the owner is being paid, but then you have to put back in the money that you would have to pay to hire somebody to do that role.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're, let's say it's $100,000 and your multiplier is 3, let's say. And so that's a $300,000 valuation hit that you're taking. And so it's really important to be able to look at it through the right lens and actually go in and evaluate, am I selling an asset or a job? And the people that are going to want to buy the assets, you have to put that money back in. And really, once you're up over a couple $100,000 of value, you're looking at selling an asset, not a job.
Gotcha.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, good enough for today's episode, and we are out of time. So just kind of wrapping up the takeaway from today is revenue alone does not create freedom. The keep it lever or the profit lever, it's about making sure the business produces real profit, protects what it earns, and rewards you for all the risk and hard work that you've invested and that you've put into this company. So that is the keep it lever. Next episode, we're gonna go to the know it lever, which is about the financial intelligence and command. And
it's my favorite lever.
Yeah. So I mean, these relate a little bit, but they're very different. I kind of mentioned a little bit about what to expect, but how better financial visibility is going to help you make faster, more confident decisions is one of the highlights. So Jeff, thanks again, and everybody else, see you next week here.
Thanks for listening to the Trimetric Roadmap powered by Business Freedom Advisors. I've been your host, Scott Landis. If you're growing a business but something still feels off, you're not alone. That's exactly why we created the Trimetric Quiz. It's not a personality test, it's a powerful diagnostic tool that shows you where you're in alignment and where things may be silently slipping off track across your business, life, and leadership. It only takes a few minutes, and the clarity you'll gain is a game changer. Go to trimetricquiz.com to take the quiz now before the cost of staying stuck gets any higher. Until next time, stay focused, stay aligned, and keep building a business that truly supports your life.